Hey innies and outies, FoxLogic here. So if it isn't already obvious, I have had a lot of personal experiences, and a lot of them have been downright crazy. I share them with my guild, to which my guild leader has told me, you should make a series on your YouTube where you start off by saying, back before I had a smartphone, which is funny to me because I tend to start these stories off by saying exactly that. Because holy heck, if I had a smartphone during the years that I had gone through college, or even while I was in high school, I would have gotten so much evidence of these things even happening to me. It really frustrates me that the only proof that I have of any of my life that has happened before smartphones is either by receipts, scars, physical photographs, which I do have a few, but not of specific things that I wish that I had, and word of mouth. But with a lot of these kinds of stories of mine, that is all I have to rely on. So before I get old and start losing my memory of the crazy adventures I have gone through, I plan to get as much of this out on these video vlogs before I lose my marbles and die. Now, one of the craziest stories to which I would say has been one of the pinnacle moments of my existence was when I came face to face with a wild black bear down in southwestern Oregon along the Rogue River. It was summer of 2008, right after I graduated college. I was a fresh graduate with very little assets to my name. I had a job at a juice bar and was biking to work every day, as this was before I owned a car. I was young and in great shape. My close friend had invited me to go with her and her dad to raft along the Rogue River. I had done this once before with them and had such a memorable experience that I didn't need any convincing to go a second time. I was on it. Now, before I continue, I must tell you that in order to do this kind of trip, you must know somebody that has a good raft, who knows the river, as the Blossom Bar Rapids in the wild section of the river are one of the most dangerous rapids in all of Oregon, reaching a Class 4 rapid and commonly referred to as a boulder garden with very complicated pathways that can spell demise for all who run it. There have been many deaths here, even for people who were fully equipped and wearing life vests. And last but not least, you must have a summer permit to even traverse the river. Getting a permit for the river is fairly complicated, as there are countless adventurers who wish to experience the beauty and danger of the Rogue River. So, seeing how this is Oregon, the state has put each permit up to a lottery to obtain. A select number of permits are allotted to the public, and each rafting group must obtain the permit by chance. So many rafters will band together to gamble on getting a permit for the rest of the group. This is how my friend and her dad obtained a permit. Her dad had convinced somebody in higher management at his job to try their hand at gambling for a ticket in hopes of bettering their chances at getting a permit for that year. Lo and behold, this experienceless greenhorn had won the ticket and was then promised a seat for him and his wife on one of the rafts. As you can probably tell, I did not get along with this manager man. He showed up with his wild thornberries safari adventure outfit, pasty white skin that likely had not seen the sun in a millennia, and a thick, overly entitled manner towards others in the party, and had an overall disrespectful attitude to the trip in general. It was clear that this man thought that this was going to be some kind of fun river floating adventure where he'd complain the entire time about the service, leave the ride as soon as it was over, go to the gift shop, write up a subpar review on Yelp, and brag to his underlings about how much of a hero he was once it was all said and done. I did not like this man. In fact, when I was first introduced to him, we were setting up our boats along the river. He got out of his chode of a Land Rover and barked orders at me to fetch his luggage to pack into the boats. No introduction, no kind casual small talk, just do work for me, servant. I didn't do anything. I basically sneered and muttered that he could shove it. I did get a bit of a talking to, as it was in my friend's dad's interest to cater to the boss's needs. I pulled the, well, I'm a guest too, and let them do all the waiting hand and foot on the royal boss king themselves. The start of the journey was smooth and enjoyable. The first day was a blast, with swimming, light beer drinking, jumping and diving into the water, and a sizzling hot sun that brought all of our fun together. At the end of the day, we had a 5-star camp meal with more beer drinking, a cool, breezy wind down in front of a fire pit as we passed a healthy blunt between the group members. It was heaven. For the most part, the trip was exactly this: rafting the river during the day to travel to our next camping spot. We camped wherever we found space to set up tents and build a fire pit. Great food, ale, pot, and a cozy deep sleep under the stars was the exact therapy that gifted our little group. It was at the end of the second day that we started to traverse traverse the wild section of the Rogue River. Now, Oregon is home to many types of wildlife, and during the summer seasons, bears mate, usually in the months of June and July. Our trip was at the end of July and into August, which still settles during this time frame. Male bears will get more aggressive and brave during this time, as they will try to mate with as many female bears as possible. Bears are also roaring opportunists when it comes to food, so many of the park rangers will set up electronic fences along the river to aid adventurers. It is typical to camp a short distance from these electric fences as to prevent bears from wandering through the camp. They will be attracted to your food, but the fence will typically discourage them from rifling through your things. And literally everything that is organic or has a smell must remain securely behind this fence, and I mean everything. Suffice to say, I had been keeping my used tampons in a bag. I had to keep this gross bag of tampons behind this fence. Even simple things like toothpaste, makeup, sunscreen had to be kept behind this fence when it wasn't in use. We had set up our camp, separated all smelly things, and began to cook dinner. It was in the middle of dinner that we spotted a black bear across the river. She was fussing with some berry bushes and going about her own business. We were all amazed to see a bear out in the wild. Wrapping up our dinner and cleaning up our utensils, while some of us enjoyed wine by the fire, we all watched the bear across the river. She was shortly joined by another bear, and the two followed each other in a slow pursuit around a large boulder. Eventually, the second bear caught up with her, and they mated right in front of us. It was a spectacle, all of us roaring in laughter as we could not believe our own eyes that we were witness to this drama in nature. As the sun set, the night was beginning to get a bit chilly. I had set my tent up a short distance away and wandered back to my things to fetch a hoodie to ward off the drifting summer chill. As I nabbed my hoodie out of my tent and stand just outside of my tent flap to pull the garment over my head, I could hear that somebody was beside me. Thinking that it was my friend, I began to talk casually to them about how funny it was that we just saw a couple of bears doing the nasty right in front of us across the river. I then put my head through my hoodie to see that I was standing face to face with a black bear who began to stand on their hind legs. I panicked. If I were to be so inclined, I could, with little effort, reach out and physically touch the bear. They were standing that close. Now, I have to tell you what exactly was going through my head at this time. My first instinct was not to run. I know that predator animals like dogs will give chase if you run, triggering their hunting instincts. Bears, I couldn't really confirm this, but for fear that my assumptions might be true, I stood right where I was. I then, thinking back to that scene in The Gods Must Be Crazy, where that little child lifts a piece of bark above their head to deter a hyena attack, I put my hands up as far as I could reach above my head and began yelling as loud as I could. Bear! Bear! Oh my god, bear! I did start to step back, to which I remembered tripping, but quickly got back to my feet and stood my ground once more. The bear did not move. It simply stood there looking directly at me with both of its ears on swivels, as I'm sure it was trying to grasp what exactly it had stumbled upon, and who this shouting woman was. This alerted the others in the camp to quickly run toward me and assess the situation. My friend, her father, and the rest of the group gathered around as I stood there shouting at the bear. After taking as much of my shouting as I could give it, the bear lowered down to its paws and began to saunter casually through the camp, not concerned with the crowd of us watching it and hissing for it to leave. It came to a tent close to mine and began to rifle through the belongings of none other than King Bossman. As it turned out, the King Bossman had type 2 diabetes and had left his bag of insulin with a pack of gummy bears in his tent. The bear grabbed the entire bag and ran for the hills. King Boss went red in the face as he looked at me and said, "You, go get my insulin," to which I said, "No, screw you." King Boss began to whine and complain, as he had exactly enough insulin to last him until the end of the trip, and according to him, if we didn't get it back, we would all have to pack up our camp and head back into the river to end our trip early. We weren't going to be doing that. Blossom Bar marks the end of the Rogue River trip, and no person in their right mind would traverse those killer rapids in the dark. A couple of the other group members attempted to follow the bear into the woods to try to get the insulin, to which they found the bear a very short distance away. day, sitting on its haunches and having a right old chow down on that pack of gummy bears, strewing the insulin bottles along the dirt and pine needles. The bear did make an attempt to enter back into the camp, but by that point we had packed up all of our food, and all smelly things accounted for were behind the electric fence. We didn't see any more bears after that, and all of us went to bed with full bellies and an air of caution as we went to sleep that night. In the morning, we found that the bear had attempted to enter our camp, but the electric fence kept it from getting into our things. Though, as it turns out, we had left a large Costco-sized jug of mayonnaise in one of the boats. The hilarious scene of creamy footprints spotting a few of the boats reminded us of just what we had seen the day before. Not to mention the perfectly cut bear claw scoop that remained within the mayonnaise tub. We did get the insulin back, and it turned out to be just enough to quiet down most of the complaining from King Boss. We braved Blossom Bar, ended our journey at Cougar Lodge, where we all ate a restaurant dinner and regaled about our journey. Anyway, that's my story about how I came face to face with an actual bear in the wild. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you like it, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. And hey, if you like my content, feel free to subscribe. I really appreciate you guys supporting my channel, as I really want to make this my big dream career. And thanks so much, innies and outies. I'll see you soon. It was clear that this man thought that this was going to be some kind of... Oh, all right. Hold on.